Chapter 26. The Beast. "Where did Raphael go?" Davinia snapped. How could the minion be so careless? Ever since the Opals helped the Pearl Moon Pack, something weird had been happening there. They were no longer able to intrude without invading her dreams. Some form of energy was stopping them from trespassing in those lands. "We will figure it out. Raphael has not yet set foot out of the territory. Otherwise, we would have caught his scent." The voice on the other side of the phone spoke. It was not that he was calm. It had already been several hours since Raphael had gone inside, and no news of him had yet reached him. The informer also had not seen Raphael.
"How do you know? He's an alpha. He knows how to cover his tracks,"
Davinia rebuked. Her father could be too arrogant at some times to see the truth.
"The air never lies,"
he insinuated. He had many things on his plate, and here he was wasting his precious time over her boy drama. Also, the Alpha had vanished.
"How do you know? I thought the same about the waters, and yet it cannot say if Alpha is dead really or not. We must be cautious. Larger forces are out there at play. It's not like the last time. I can feel it,"
Davinia insisted. She had always been one who was more careful among the two. Her father was the strongest person she knew, but he was blinded by ego and ambition. Davinia, on the other hand, was more poised and calm. She could wait for the right time to strike and was not impulsive. Probably this was something that she got from her mother.
"You foolish child. You compare your powers with me? Don't forget I have lived longer and seen these forces play out their part more times than you know. I have waited for this for so long, I will not let it go."
The father fumed before disconnecting the call, leaving Davinia wondering. As more time passed and she didn't get any more information, her impatience increased. Raphael was not picking up her call. He had blocked all links. There was only one person who probably knew where Raphael was. She had to convince Jander to let her know about his whereabouts. She stormed towards his chamber, unsure how to convince him. If required, she would use some of her alpha voice to make him speak. It was not a wise thing to do. It would unravel some of her secrets, while she needed to pass as a strong wolf. The truth about her will sabotage their mission, but she was not left with many choices. As soon as she barged inside the chamber, she was astonished. An unexpected guest was seated, and there was no one else.
"Why are you here, Lucian?"
Davinia groaned. What was cooking between these men? And why were they keeping her out of the loop? Had Raphael started doubting her already? She had to know.
"I came here to know about your Alpha's absence. These are trying times. I am here to extract some information from the Beta. But I guess you will do just fine. After all, you are his Luna."
Lucian smirked. He particularly said the last part trying to mock her, and her expression showed that he was successful. For some unknown reason, he'd never felt comfortable around Davinia. He found her way too pretentious and too good to be true. He wanted to see through her, but every time he tried to pull some dirt on her, she came out more clean. It was unsettling. But he was glad Raphael had agreed to keep Davinia out of their ordeals.
"He's out to seek the vampire prince for some answers. After all, these are trying times."
Davinia spit at him. She didn't need to be kind and sweet towards Lucian. She could kill him right there and no one would ever find out. For all she knew, she could choke him with the wine he was drinking. A twisted smile appeared on her face as she thought of the ways she could kill Lucian, unsettling Lucian to his bones. Lucian stared deep inside her, trying to find some answers. Her face was too familiar, yet he could never remember where he had seen it. Maybe around Raphael when he beat the pulp out of him in that duel, but his gut feeling said something different. They all had grown stronger, more muscular, yet Davinia looked the exact same, except for her hair, of course. The more he looked at her, the more mysterious she appeared.
I know that you are not from Black Moon originally. How did you manage to climb the ladders so fast?
Lucian chuckled. He didn't want to show his apprehensions. His doubts were his own until he had anything concrete to speak out loud. Till then, his mind games would be enough.
Hard work and practice. If you'd done that, you might have ended up being the true alpha of Midnight City,
Davinia sneered at him. She knew where to prick at him so it would hurt the most. It was the most embarrassing moment of Lucian's life. Not once before him a Silverlit had lost a duel. And he was the crowned prince, yet he lost so badly to Raphael. It was one of the reasons he admired Raphael, but it didn't decrease his bitterness.
And yet, I managed to forge a relationship with the Black Moons, unlike my ancestors. Over several centuries, a midnight wolf is born, Davinia. I was not aware of that before, but you already knew that, didn't you?
Lucian reckoned. He was unsure if he was still letting out some information that he shouldn't, but he had to bet on something. He was playing his tricks, unsure if Davinia truly knew it or not. When Davinia didn't seem fazed by it, he knew his doubts were correct. It was a secret his father told him after the duel was over, and he knew it because somehow they were descendants of the purebloods, even if they didn't carry their powers. Davinia stared into his eyes, trying to see if Lucian knew her secrets. Never before had she thought him a potential threat, and yet here they both were, standing, glaring daggers at each other. When she couldn't see anything except a smirk on his face, she knew it was her cue to play in the dark.
What are you saying? Black wolves aren't rare.
She tried to play it cool, but that time had passed.
I know. Just playing with our little Luna here,
Lucian chuckled. He was sure that she was hiding things. It could be for or from her pack, only time would tell.
I shall call Jander,
Davinia said as she started linking Jander.
No. Now that I know about Raphael's whereabouts, I shall leave.
Lucian sneered as he walked past Davinia. He was determined to get more facts from her. It was high time he stopped ignoring his wolf instincts. Not long after, Jander came into the room, only to find an angry Davinia. She was still their Luna, and he had to make sure Davinia was doing okay in their alpha's absence. You don't seem well, Jander asked.
Where is Raphael? I know he didn't go to the vampire prince. I called him.
Davinia looked straight into his eyes. She didn't want to give Jander any time to think. She used a small amount of alpha tone that would not get noticed, probably. I don't know. I'm glad you found out. Raphael is not where he said he would be to me. I'm worried. He blocked me and commanded me to only connect if there was an absolute emergency, Jander retorted. He wasn't lying. Raphael had left the Pearl Moon Pack rather too quickly and did not say why. After that, Raphael was blocking him as well. The only thing he had insisted on is that no one should know his whereabouts, no matter what. Raphael had commanded Jander to connect with him only when there was a dire need that they couldn't handle. Davinia knew it was useless to use her powers on him. He was a beta. Jander would resist them, and if it became too overbearing, Jander would end his life, but not go against his alpha. Jander was the beta of the Midnight Wolf, which meant he was more powerful than some alphas. She sighed. Probably she was right all along. Raphael was no longer in the Pearl Moon territory. There was only one way to find out, and it was not going to end well for anybody, but no one was giving her any choice. She returned to her chambers and waited for the sunset. Then she disguised herself and left for the nearby human settlement. She walked past cold lanes into the darker, narrow ones. She was disgusted to do so, but it was her only way. Then she finally stopped before a small wooden door. An extremely pungent smell was coming from inside. The man was probably sick or too wasted. Either way, her work would be more comfortable. She knocked on the door several times and waited, but when it didn't open, she burst through it.
"Who dares to get inside?" a drunk voice came from inside. The place smelled horrible, and it was no less than a stinking hole in the wall. She didn't feel the necessity to remove the small piece of clothing protecting her nose from the foul smell and replied to the wastrel. She clicked her heels on the wooden floor as she approached the sound coming from inside. It wasn't big, so it only took her a few seconds to find them. "Who are you? Looking for some great dick?" The man flashed his dirty teeth. The man smelled like rotten eggs. Davinia felt an urge to vomit, but tried to ignore it. These were the men who don't reason. All they want was a little money, alcohol, and some sense of power. "Here, take it." She handed him a small box, but it changed the demeanor of the man. He knew it was finally his turn to change his rat life. He had waited for generations for this. People thought he was mad, obsessed, but at last he was going to be sired. He grabbed the box and opened it with lightning speed, smiling the whole time with greed. It had a few small pills filled with warm blood. He was about to intake them when Davinia stopped him. "Not here," she commanded. He didn't fuss. He followed her around like a dog to her car. Davinia made a mental note to wash it several times after this was over, but it was a sacrifice she was willing to make. Once they were close to the borders of the Midnight City, she dropped him. She asked him to enter the city and wait for the streets to calm down before swallowing the pill. She ensured that he would reach the small pack of Seth. It was under Raphael's protection, and they were too small to put up a big fight. It was perfect. No one would ever doubt her. Then she slipped inside her chambers as she waited for her works to unfold. If her father can't do it for her, she would find Raphael. He must know she was the only one who could save his pack, and the only one he could trust. The man was restless. He was too drunk and greedy to wait for nightfall. It was still several hours from that time when he decided to have just one pill. The excuse was to figure out how it worked. He knew he should do it one by one, but the kick it provided was too much. Every time the blood mixed with his, he could feel the power surge through him. Not long after, he could feel some of his bones breaking as the transformation into one of the wolves started. But it didn't hurt him. He could only feel becoming strong and powerful. All he wanted at that moment was to become invincible. Shortly after, he took the remaining pills and swallowed them together. A large amount of power burst through him, blocking his thoughts. He was no longer himself. His sire's greed and desire replaced his own. He could feel the rage and obsession, and an unending need for power and victory as the blood of his sire coursed through his veins. His eyes turned red as his hands, legs, and face shifted into a monster. He was neither a wolf nor a man. He was a beast. A loud growl echoed through the entire eastern side of the city, followed by a loud thud that woke up the Crystal Moon members. It was early, but the entrance had been better than Davinia had expected. A malicious grin covered her face as the door burst open behind her. "The beast!" Jander babbled in fear. Chapter 27. The Hero. "The Crystal Moons are under attack. Seth sent out a distress signal. We have to help them." Jander burst in to find Davinia staring at the horizon from her window.
"I know. Get our warriors ready and separate them into 2 groups. We have to be very careful not to become the next target, as well as protect the others. We also need to protect our own."
Davinia turned around with a fury on her face. There were visible signs of strain, but she had a calm demeanor, surprising Jander as a genuine leader should be in such disastrous situations. She was about to make a great Luna, thought Jander. "As you say, Luna. Anything else?" inclined Jander. In Raphael's absence, he must heed his Luna. Davinia was taking appropriate measures. She was anything but weak. She was the best fighter they'd ever had. Her ability had made her a Luna.
Yes, you will remain here with the group. I will take the fight to the beast, while you secure our borders with Liriana. No one should dare attack a fellow pack of the Black Moons."
Davinia had a firm resolve in her voice. Jander wanted to fight the beast, but there was nothing to protest about. He knew Davinia was capable and that he shouldn't doubt her capabilities. It was only fitting that the Beta and Luna divide in such a situation, taking ownership of their responsibilities in the absence of their alpha. "I will secure our borders, and I will reach out to Raphael," Jander accorded.
"That's right. Let me know as soon as Raphael gets back. We do not know how many of these invaded our land."
Davinia nodded. She was secretly pleased to see her plan unfold in a better way. There was no way now Raphael could hide and abandon his pack. He had to return. And once he did, if she had to, she could put a tracker on him. They walked to their battle hall, where Liriana was already waiting for them with the warriors. Liriana was going to make sure the weakest and the kids were safe, while Jander patrolled the borders with runners. Davinia and several combatants set out for the Crystal Moon. By the time they got there, a lot of destruction had already happened. Many wolf corpses lay on the sides of the street. No human or wolf could do such a thing to anyone. For a few, the beast had brutally ripped out the whole intestine. For some others, it had destroyed their faces completely. It had so many cuts and bruises that it was difficult to recognize them. A few who survived the fight had picked up a strange infection, and it was spreading too badly. They wouldn't last the night. One fighter approached an infected wolf who turned out to be Seth. He had no signs of injury, yet his veins had darkened and his skin had become bluish-black, while at a few places it was rotting. His eyes were red and he was bleeding from his ears.
"Nobody touches anything, including Seth," Davinia ordained.
"But he needs our help. He's their alpha," the fighter rebuked.
He couldn't run afoul of his Luna, but it made no sense to let him die.
"Seth has caught that infection, and we don't know why. It might be transmissible," Davinia cracked.
"Every Luna is right. Everybody stay back and be cautious,"
another wolf went along with her. Davinia cussed under her breath. That sucker must have taken all the pills together. He would be extremely powerful now, but he wouldn't make it through the night. Evidently, his body couldn't bear that power, and it had led to this infection. And now he was decimating it. Anyone who came in contact with infected wolves or dead bodies would eventually become infected too. The issue was that other wolves would die while she survived. That might put her in question. She had to kill the sire before it got to be too late. She wanted to wait till Raphael came back. Until then, she would have to let the beast wreak havoc, but now she had to move fast and kill it. She couldn't let it roam freely, spreading the infection. The only way to end it was to kill him.
"Each one of you has to ensure that you do not touch any of the corpses or infected people. We have to spread out and hunt for the beast," she ordered.
Davinia knew where it was. She could sense it from the connection. She turned everyone in the wrong direction and went after him herself. The sire was heading toward the hideout of their pack. Their hideout was not as strong in comparison as the other pack's safe houses, as they were in a new one. When she was by herself, she approached the hideout. By the time Davinia arrived there, the beast had already tried to destroy the main gate. She could possess him and kill him in seconds. It was a straightforward job. No one was there to see that it wasn't an actual fight. She put a mean smile on her face. She was on the verge of taking control when Lucian approached her.
"It's so courageous of you to come and fight alone,"
Lucian startled. He felt amused to find her alone.
"Aren't you alone as well?" Davinia snapped.
Davinia was a little angry. She could no longer take control over the sire and kill him with ease. Now she had to put up a fight. It's not that it was difficult for her with her abilities, it's just that she couldn't use them in front of Lucian.
"What can I say? Outstanding leaders think alike," Lucian sneered.
He whistled at the sire, gaining his attention successfully. Without thinking twice, Lucian charged in its direction. He wasn't carrying a gun, nor was he shifting. At first, Davinia believed he was being reckless and frivolous. She looked forward to his death. With him dead, there might be one less problem to worry about. But she was speechless when she saw Lucian wielding a simple silver dagger. She couldn't stop from wondering what he was and how he could do that. Only purebloods could do that, and she was certain he was not among them. He had to live. However, she would wait and watch the fight to learn more about the dagger. The fight soon became one-sided, the beast clearly having the upper hand. Lucian suffered several bruises and cuts, but the beast didn't inflict them directly. He flew in all directions as the beast punched and kicked him with all of its might, but every time he fell he returned with more determination. The beast was growing restless. He made a roar as Lucian charged forward for the umpteenth time, but this time he got lucky. Before he could reach him to tear him apart, Lucian pierced his chest successfully. The sire began bleeding profusely, and strangely it didn't heal. It confused Divinia. The silver couldn't affect it. The beast had her blood. But whatever weapon Lucian struck him with was the reason behind this. The beast groaned in pain, its eyes turned redder as it marched towards Lucian, destroying everything in its path. He was thirsty for his blood. Divinia knew he could not let it kill Lucian now. A lot of mysteries revolved around him. No wonder they stayed to the sidelines. She charged in the beast's direction and shifted in mid-air, catching it by surprise. The beast was so focused on Lucian it didn't see her coming until she was close enough to rip its heart out. And just like that, his lifeless body fell. It transformed into its human form, a frail man. The sudden turn of events also surprised Lucian. He'd imagined that the beast would die the minute the silver pierced him, but it triggered the rage of the beast even more. Lucian was certain that he was going to die in the hands of the beast when it inhumanly advanced towards him, but out of nowhere Divinia jumped and plucked its heart out. She proved to be a hero, his savior, and he doubted her all along. Maybe Raphael did the right thing when he made such a powerful warrior his Luna. "Thanks," Lucian whispered while covering Divinia with his shirt. Divinia snickered. That fool was about to wrap himself around her fingers. After all, she was his savior.
"You had him diverted enough. He didn't see that coming. I would say teamwork."
Divinia extended a hand of friendship. She must gain his confidence. Lucian had no hesitation this time. He was eternally in her debt. He nodded his head in agreement. But Divinia's attention was divided the moment she saw her empty wrist. She was looking for something. "What are you looking for?" Lucian asked.
"My bracelet. I think I dropped it when I shifted, but that has never happened before. I'll ask the Black Moon to look for it. It's a gift from Raphael."
She smiled. Lucian helped people inside that safe house. Divinia linked her pack members to ensure that everyone was safe. The infected wolves were still alive, including Seth, miraculously healed as soon as the beast had been killed. Nothing from that night made any sense. Every wolf had different questions, but the wolves of Crystal Moon, the warriors of Black Moon, and the Silverlit joined forces to clean the corpses and ensure that the wounded got treated appropriately. It was still a long night, and a lot of work was still to be done, but it was at this moment that Raphael reached out. He seemed tired and exhausted. But he wanted to make sure everyone was safe, even if he knew he was too late. He was only proud and respectful of his Luna. Divinia ran to his side and clasped Raphael in her arms. She was afraid he wouldn't come, as they'd now resolved the beast problem, but here he was, and that's all she wanted right now.
"Where were you? Look what happened."
Divinia had tears in her eyes that she didn't understand. When she saw Raphael, it was like she was at peace. Why did she feel such relief? Did she ever have any actual feelings about him? Or is it just because she considered herself important to him while he was holding her back? Regardless of the reason, she couldn't help but feel drawn to him. She tightened the hug with Raphael without waiting for his response, which was surprising. He obliged, embracing her back.
I'm sorry. I should have been here. You were brave, he whispered in her ear, giving her a friendly kiss on the forehead to calm her down. There was nothing romantic about it, at least to Raphael. Davinia closed her eyes, surmounted by her sudden and bizarre feelings. He could feel her eccentric heartbeats. Raphael knew he shouldn't have kissed Davinia because of their history. He shouldn't be leading her on in any way, now that there was a possibility Elsa was alive. But he owed it to her. She saved their city while he was away. It was his turn to appease her. Lucian sneered as he looked at them from afar. He knew he had to wait before having his turn to meet Raphael. Lucian made his way to the beast's body, then covered in his blood. He looked over the fragile body. There was no way for this body to handle all of this power and strength. He just sat there trying to figure out something about the whole thing. The beast was a shifter like them. He groaned as he leaned in to inspect. He was seeking clues. Lucian searched his body, looking for any visible signs, and there were none. Then he checked the bone behind his ears. He could tell that he was not a regular shifter. He didn't want to check the pockets of his trousers. Most of his clothes had been torn out anyway, and it was the last thing to check. As he searched inside them, he found a bracelet. It was a little dangling blue delicate butterfly bracelet with a little charm in the shape of a D. Chapter 28. Jealousy Tangles. When will Beatrice wake up? It's been a day now. Noah paced, asking the pack doctor Maya.
She should have woken by now, but then Beatrice is not a regular wolf,
Maya exclaimed. Maya despised Beatrice. It was clear from her tone. You don't like her? Noah queried.
I have reasons you are well aware of, Alpha. I care for this pack. I care for you,
Maya said without looking at him. She was checking her pulse and heart rate. Despite her hostility toward Beatrice, she was loyal to her Alpha. If her Alpha deemed Beatrice as an opal, Maya would help Beatrice. I can assure you she is not a threat. She entrusted me with her worries and has opened up to me with her secrets, Noah insisted. Noah wasn't at liberty to spill Elsa's secrets yet, but Maya was like a motherly figure to them, and it was she who'd found out that Elsa's blood had certain similarities to that of the creature, so he couldn't blame Maya for having her doubts. But Noah knew Elsa, but he could only assure Maya that his Alpha sense was true.
If my Alpha is keen to protect her and trust her, then I shall commit to the cause. But as an individual, I can't help but wonder what she is and what things she can do. We all know how her wolf single-handedly fought those wild rogues.
Maya got up from the bedside chair, looking straight into Noah's eyes. Noah sighed. He had nothing to say to wear off her suspicions. Even he didn't know of Elsa's potential or origin. It was all dark. Hell, Elsa as well was in search of those answers. All they could do was handle one problem at a time. And right now, his entire focus was on Cynthia's safety. He couldn't let those other things rampage in his city. He had already lost too many loved ones, and couldn't bear to suffer more.
Her vitals are normal. When you want, you can talk to me, Noah,
Maya affirmed in an affectionate voice. She walked out of the room, leaving him alone. Noah was her Alpha now. But Noah was just a child when Maya first came to this pack. He was really a sick kid, and her parents were far too worried about his health. But with proper care and treatment, he'd recovered well. Maya was proud of what Noah had become today. He was wise, well-mannered, and strong. Who knew such a feeble child could make such a strong Alpha one day? It was all Noah's determination and hard work. Of course, his wolf helped a lot, too. Noah hissed as he sat beside Elsa. There was no sign of fatigue or pain. She looked peaceful in her slumber. How he wanted her to wake up and say she was all right. He puffed in frustration.
You should leave. I can stay. The pack needs its alpha. We leave tomorrow for Cynthia. You need to speak to them.
Kira spoke. It startled Noah to hear her voice at first. He was so engrossed in his thoughts for Elsa that he didn't even notice that Kira had come in. Thank you, Noah said politely, walking out of the room. He didn't want to make it more conspicuous than it was. He knew Kira had several questions for him he was not ready to answer yet. Noah was showing too much affection and care. He was always the aloof one before Elsa. Kira locked the door and sighed. She walked towards Beatrice and scowled at her. Who knew this girl could trap such an indifferent alpha? Kira had harbored feelings for Noah ever since she understood such things. She'd always believed that she was Noah's mate, until Fiona appeared. She knew how painful that night was for her. It was as if her entire world shattered in a split second. Kira had cried to sleep for several nights until it had eased. She found her motive in serving him as her alpha. It didn't matter if Noah was not her mate. She was still going to be with him as his beta. But in just the rampart way Fiona had appeared in Noah's life, she left too in a similar fashion. Too quick, too impactful. That time again, Kira had given her unconditional support to Noah. She stood by him and supported his cause. But Noah didn't think of her as anything more than a friend. And here, Beatrice hardly wakes up like a damsel in distress and sweeps him off like it was nothing? How? Did she hate Beatrice? Maybe, maybe not. But Kira was sure she was envious of Beatrice. She'd been a fool to not realize that they were going so far until she saw Noah on Beatrice's balcony. They had to be close for Beatrice to embrace him like that, and Noah didn't even flinch. It was as if he was to later have her clinging to his chest. Kira felt a pang of pain as that memory flashed through her mind. She couldn't understand what to do with that knowledge. Kira could never lose Noah again to somebody else. She would prefer death over it. Elsa coughed without being able to complete the word. She came out of her concussion, but her eyes had a weird blue lining to them for a brief second before it went back to normal. It lasted for such a quick moment that Kira wondered if it was her imagination or some reflection. Kira got Elsa some water and she gulped it down in one go.
Are you fine, Beatrice?
Kira asked, concern in her voice. She didn't hate Beatrice, but Kira didn't like her either.
I'm fine. Just a mild headache. Nothing that I can't handle. How long have I been out?
Elsa babbled.
Almost 24 hours. We had intention to leave today, but you had other plans, Sleeping Beauty, Kira chided. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I was fine one moment, and next, I felt this excruciating pain that I couldn't handle. It was so void that it sucked all my energy.
Elsa's eyes watered, remembering that loneliness. It reminded her of the oblivion. It was scary. Without her knowledge, a single tear trailed down her cheeks, but she quickly wiped it away.
It's all right. I will inform Noah that you're awake. We can start the day after if you want to get some rest, but if you can manage, we must leave. Cynthia needs its real alpha,
Kira suggested.
No, I'm better. We can leave. I am a little hungry, but is it crazy that I say I feel tired?
Elsa smiled.
No, concussion does that to one. I'll send some food and you can rest,
Kira replied with a smile of her own. Kira patted her shoulder and left. Kira asked someone to get her some food through the pack link. She informed Maya that Elsa was out of her coma. Kira was feeling overwhelmed, unsure of how to deal with anything. She'd given her entire life to this man, and he didn't even spare her a glance. How was she going to survive that? She needed a run, a desperate run, and later to lose some heat. Kira was near the tree line when she saw a shadow approaching her. She knew to whom that belonged. She sighed and walked towards it.
"You look reckless,"
the approaching figure said.
"Naomi, I need that run,"
Kira rebuked.
"What you need is someone to talk to, Kira,"
Naomi stated. She had her arms open and was looking lovingly at Kira.
"You and your melodramas,"
Naomi chuckled, feeling light. Old friends who knew each other inside and out can have that effect.
"Why don't you tell him you love him?"
Naomi's voice had a hint of concern.
"I can't. Noah thinks that we're friends. All these years, he still believes that. I'm afraid I'll lose him,"
Kira huffed. She had this uncomfortable smile on her face as her eyes swelled with traitorous tears.
I can understand. But how long are you going to waste your life for him? You need to go out and look for a mate, a chosen one at least."
Naomi sat on the grass and patted beside her for Kira to sit. She puffed, but sat anyway.
"I don't know. I can't leave Noah in the middle of all this chaos."
Kira looked beyond the horizon. She was uncertain what she meant from chaos exactly, whether it was the current developments in their lives or her heart.
"Noah likes Beatrice. I can tell you know that already,"
Naomi tried to console her.
"I know, but I'm not sure what I can do about it, except for the run."
Kira giggled. She tried to make it look funny when it wasn't.
"Kira, you need to decide. You can put your heart on the line too long. You know what it can do to you. I'm living example, honey."
Naomi had tears in her eyes as memories flashed through her mind. Naomi had seen the man she loved get killed before her that tragic night when she lost her parents. Naomi was so guilt-ridden that it tipped her over the edge. She froze as that devil massacred everyone she loved. And that day, Naomi lost her wolf, too. It had not spoken or surfaced ever since. Obviously, she had a better sense of everything, but she was more human than Werewolf. Naomi was among the few lucky ones to find a chance at love again. Even though Julius was human, he accepted her and her kind for who they were. She was in a blissful state in her life, but not everyone is lucky like her, and Naomi could not bear to see Kira suffer so much. Kira was a sister to her.
"I promise I'll do whatever it takes to ensure my happiness. I won't let my heart get trampled once again."
Kira had a smile on her face. It was unsettling. Naomi was unsure what she meant, but she hoped Kira merely meant that she would take better care of her heart than she did when Fiona came into Noah's life. She'd not seen Fiona, but she knew how much Fiona's death had affected her brother. Noah was recovering from the darkness within him. Naomi was happy to see Noah smile and be more lively this time. Naomi felt grateful towards Beatrice, but her heart mourned for Kira too. But this is when Kira could hear Noah reaching out to her. There was a sense of urgency.
"What is it, Noah?"
she linked back. "We have to leave, now. Cynthia is under attack. They know we're on our way. Someone tip them off, Kira." Noah's voice was impatient. She knew he was furious. Kira looked at Naomi and she nodded her head. Without wasting a single second, she rushed to the side of her alpha, her love. It unsettled her to see Beatrice already sitting behind Noah on his bike, but now was not the time for jealousy fits. All she could see was blood, and it was wartime. She pressed the self-start button on her bike as the engine roared to life before she drove with her pack like the savage queen she was, to Cynthia. Chapter 29. Cynthia. When the Opals reached Cynthia's boundaries, it was already the middle of the battle. They could tell that the city was crawling with the sires and dead bodies dropped off everywhere. Hundreds of rogues were fighting with Cynthia's fighters, but they obviously had the advantage.
I've never seen so many rogues all together. They could pass as some kind of pack. A terrible, terrible pack,
Elsa yelped in shock. I know that feeling. I can't say I haven't thought that. Their numbers have grown over the years, Noah exclaimed.
What do we do?
Kira linked. We split. I will fight and you shall protect the weak, like always, Noah riposted.
What do I do?
Elsa queried. What? It confused Noah. There was no way Elsa would have been able to hear the conversation.
You and Elsa are splitting. Who must I join?
Queried Elsa again. You could hear that? How? When this is all over, Elsa, we are going to find out who you are. You stick with Maya in the camp. I sense they're after you. Noah meditated. He didn't have time to speculate about it, regardless of how surprised he was. They were at war. Kira and several fighters headed for the hideouts as stealthily as possible. They were not interested in getting caught. They must be quiet and discreet, and fight only when necessary. Noah and his frontline fighters entered the war fully armed. Few of them shifted too. Maya and a few others, including Elsa, remained outside the borders. They set up a small camp to help the injured. When they first saw the city, it startled them to witness such destruction. They were late. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. Noah and the others fought to get in, ripping, killing everything that went through them. But the battle was very unilateral with their numbers teeming. The wolves of the small packs lacked the skills to fight these creatures. They had crossed the frontiers, and a few packs had already lost their alpha, making them even weaker. The only wolves that stood against them were the Nightwalkers and the Opals. Noah was trying to find his brother. He could tell that Neil was alive, based on how the Nightwalkers fought valiantly. They would have felt the loss of their alpha if he was dead. But they were still in for a tough fight. His concern for protecting his last surviving family prevented him from moving forward. He had to check on Neil and make sure he was safe. Where are you, Kira? Did you see Neil? Noah tried to establish a connection with her. After some time, Kira answered. She was breathless and scared. What she was about to say was bad news.
Noah, it's Neil. He got hurt trying to protect the hideout. The rascals gained entry while the weak wolves were still inside. The beta died, and the Luna is inside. She was about to have a baby, but we don't know what happened. Hurry here. The opals who went inside haven't returned, Kira shrieked. Noah could sense fear and anger and anguish in her voice. Hold it for me, Kira. I'm coming, Noah roared, his anger directed at the beasts and rogues. He would not lose anybody today. Noah just saw red. He shifted midair and ran towards the pack house where the hideout was located, tearing and killing everything that tried to stop him. The wolves felt tired from the combat. They wouldn't last long. The opals were not sufficient to win the battle over Cynthia. The only thing he could do today was to keep the rest of the wolves alive to fight another day. But once he got to the front of the pack house, he grunted. Neil was whimpering in pain, and Kira had passed out. Many Nightwalkers and Opals had died, and the others inside had a bleak chance of survival. It was crazy to walk inside the house. That was no longer the hideout, but a red zone. But Leah and the baby were likely still alive inside. Perhaps the members of his pack and the Nightwalkers are still alive. It was not in Noah to relinquish all those lives. There was no way he could live with that guilt. Noah turned to his human form, hurtling to the side of his bleeding brother. Neil, I defy you should not die. I command you as an alpha, if not as your brother, Noah muttered. Tears filled his eyes while he grappled, trying to prevent them from falling. He embraced his brother in a big hug as he shook Neil a bit, hoping it would deem him healthy. You are not my alpha, Neil chuckled in pain. Neil, stay with me. We will survive this. Noah cupped his younger brother's cheek and looked at him with conviction. He wanted Neil to believe that. Only a miracle can do such a thing, my brother. There are so many of them. They're monsters, brother. But I do sense Leah and the baby are alive. Please save them. Promise me. Neil struggled to speak. He was too weak and his body was not recovering as quickly as it should. Noah was on the verge of promising when he heard a rumble behind him. It was a sire that resembled what Elsa had described. If Elsa and Maya were right, they consumed some pills or blood to turn into those creatures. Noah left his brother, headed his way to the fight. He couldn't have this thing anywhere near Kira or Neil. He shifted into his wolf Adolf in a fraction of a second and pounded towards it, but it was faster and stronger. One thrash from it and Adolf fell just inches away. He groaned in pain, but he didn't have the luxury of being hurt. Adolf stood, ignoring the wound. Adolf growled and ran towards the creature. This time he got sharper. Adolf gave the impression that he was going to jump to the right side when he hopped to the left side of the sire. The sire didn't expect the effect of surprise. It was not expecting that movement and couldn't evade the attack. Adolf bit his left neck and ripped him apart in a split second, killing the sire. But there was no end. Several rogue wolves and 2 other sires appeared. It was like they were waiting for the previous one to die so they could launch this attack on him. Adolf was unsure how he would respond, but his human, Noah, had a rock-hard determination. He let out a loud growl. This time he held it together, waiting for the attackers to take the first step. But when they all charged towards him at the same time, he regretted that decision. But before he could make a move, the bodies of 2 wolves flew right in front of him. It stunned everyone, including Noah. A pure white wolf in all its glory was standing before them. Ayla was quiet, surprisingly calm. The remaining wolves and the sires were no longer interested in Noah, as their focus was now on this marvelous creature. It drew them. Elsa! Noah looked at her amazed. He had seen her wolf before, but seeing her now was not the same. Elsa's wolf, Ayla, looked like the moon goddess herself. She was calm, and yet her aura was overpowering. A rogue wolf charged her, but he had scarcely reached her when Ayla threw herself upon him, tearing out his heart. The other rogues simply fled, but the beast grumbled in anger. They were too self-assured to think anything could defeat them. After all, they were simple men with a single-minded desire. Ayla didn't have any trouble fighting the sire who attacked first. The sire was only muscles and not brains. All she had to do was wait. When he punched her, she swiftly ducked and jumped on top, snapping his head. Now only one sire remained. But it didn't attack her. It quietly stood there in awe. Noah, who was already back in his human form, could hardly digest any of these things. At some point, Kira had come to her senses, and that disconcerted her. Neil looked admirably at the white wolf. It was the miracle he was hoping for all this while. He felt confident that they should survive. Elsa shifted to her human form. Oddly enough, she felt neither shy nor the need to hide. Elsa looked confident and felt the thrust of power through her veins. She had an instinct that this sire would no longer put up a fight.
"You are stronger than last time, kitten," the sire mocked.
One could tell something possessed the sire.
"I am learning,"
Elsa retorted.
Come to me. I can teach you. You are far more precious than you believe," it sneered.
"That I'm beginning to understand. Who are you? Why are you doing this to these packs when what you want is me?" Elsa questioned.
"Suffices to say that they are necessary, mere casualties. Some sacrifices for a greater good," he grinned.
"You are vile," Elsa hissed. "How can so many lives be mere? Who gets to decide that?"
"But I am your destiny. You cannot run from me, kitten. Your place is beside me, not against me."
It had a malicious smirk while saying this. It was as if he really thought he was saying things that made sense when all he was really saying was gibberish. It disgusted her.
"Who the fuck are you?" Elsa groaned.
"I have no obligation to tell you that, kitten. But I waited so long for you, I don't want to hide any more. I am Anthony, and you, my kitten, are the Luna for me."
The sire had a dirty, sinful, criminal smile that made Elsa shudder. However, Noah was the first to respond. No one, absolutely no one, should be able to threaten his loved one. But the being was too powerful. His eyes suddenly glowed with a blue fire ring. All he had to do was look and smother the air out of Noah. Noah couldn't breathe. As he struggled for air, his body paled, and it almost sucked the life out of his body. Noah didn't know how the sire did that, but it was too powerful for Noah to retaliate. Elsa fumed. She ran up to Noah to help him, but the air around Noah held her back. She fought and sought to reach him, but nothing worked. Kira and Neil were too weak to do anything. All they did was shout and grunt. But as each minute went by, they could see Noah's life slipping out of his body. Noah fell as he gasped for air. He attempted to release himself from the invisible restraints around his neck. It was clamping his throat and squeezing his lungs of the last bits of remaining air. His entire life flashed before his eyes. All he could see at the time was Elsa, who was crying and fighting to reach him. He knew it was time. He smiled to say goodbye. But what happened next confused everyone. Elsa's eyes glistened, and a burning blue ring appeared just like that of the sire. She was glowing as power rushed through her body. One second she was crying and struggling. The next she was floating in the air as sparks flew around her. She was no longer an ordinary wolf, but a powerful being who controlled the surrounding air. In the blink of an eye, the sire's body fell lifeless, as the air inside it tightened and his veins exploded. The invisible chains that strangled Noah withdrew, leaving a mark around his neck. He was panting and gasping, but that was no longer his main concern. Before them, there was an omnipotent being who did not know how to control her rage. It didn't stop with that sire. The hues and the cries of the other rogues and sires were clearly discernible. The hooting and howls of the wolves of Cynthia were clearly audible. They thought they would win at the spur of the moment when their assailant suddenly fell dead. Noah felt terrified as he rushed to Elsa. He pleaded with her and tried to get her to calm down, but she was too powerful and too angry to let anyone near him. Noah was unsure how he was going to stop her. It was okay when she was killing sires and rogues, but the question remained, was she going to stop with them? Chapter 30. Wrath Elsa. Noah's horror came true. Elsa couldn't control the powers surging through her. No one had seen anything like this to give her any advice. The beasts and rogues' bodies fell like rats. Some died of suffocation as the air got squeezed out of their lungs, and others simply burnt. For some, their veins burst, leading them to die in a pool of their own blood. The opals and the wolves of Cynthia shivered in fear when their short-lived happiness was over. They were the later targets. Noah pleaded with Elsa to stop, but it was as if the power had consumed her, and she was not there anymore. Kira and Neil only looked at each other in disbelief as more and more wolves gathered near them. No one dared to go near the floating figure except Noah, but her power was too much for Noah to do anything. They'd all about lost hope when Elsa's eyes suddenly started going back to normal.
"Raphael?"
was all she spoke before the blue-red sparks coming out of her decreased. Her body dropped with a thud, and one could assume she broke all of her bones. But she only fell on the grass with her eyes turning completely white, again, out of the blue. No one knew what was happening to Elsa. Noah summoned Maya and all the doctors who were present and Cynthia. It was nothing they had ever seen or heard of before. Whoever Elsa was, she was too powerful, and if she didn't learn how to control herself, she could destroy everything in seconds. Noah tried to pick up Elsa, but he felt a jolt of current. Even though she was not destroying everything around her, she was still in some sort of trance. The energy within her solely focused on something else, and Noah didn't want to admit it, but he knew it had something to do with her previous mate, Raphael. It hurt Noah that Elsa was reaching out to Raphael instead of him, but if that was going to ensure everyone's safety, including Elsa's, he'll survive that. They surrounded her in astonishment, waiting for her to wake up. Only time would tell if their survivor would turn into their slayer. Raphael was feeling restless. He was definite that it had something to do with Elsa, or whoever Beatrice was. His heart had decided that it was their Elsa, but he needed to meet this girl to confirm. He took out the bedsheet that still smelled of lavenders and roses and sniffed it. It calmed his nerves a bit. Raphael's wolf Jera could sense some rogues near the vehicle, so they ditched it and ran in the direction the Pearl Moon's Luna had said. He had to rent another car for the journey from the next town, but after only a few miles, Elsa's scent faded. They must have used vehicles to travel, but at least he was confident that he was on the right path. He had reached a small human town that smelled of some wolves' presence. He wanted to find out more, and his heart said that Elsa could be near. But that's when he heard a distress call from Jander. He knew it had to be something important for Jander to reach out like that. It was almost nightfall. He felt scared for the safety of the Black Moon Pack and the Moonlit City. His fear only became more real when Jander told him about the first attack from a single beast. Till now, they'd gotten reports of single hunts, but it could be an exception, or they might have the wrong information. Whatever it was in his city, the pack needed him, and he was miles apart. He knew it would take forever to reach his pack by car, so he had to run through the forest to get there faster. But he was still too late. The things he was feeling while leaving the city may have something to do with it. Otherwise, why did the attack take place in his absence? Had it not been for Davinia, who knows what would have happened? Seth's pack had very few members left alive. Seth planned to surrender to his brother and join their pack, but Raphael had talked some sense into him. He needed to make sure that the Crystal Moon wolves were flourishing again. Perhaps he will shift the recent refugees to the Crystal Moon Pack. All said, the uneasiness was back again, but this time the sweet smell from the bedsheet only incited it. Raphael paced through his room when he could feel the discomfort changing into a gruesome pain, and before he knew it, he fell to his knees as an intense despondency surged through his body, and he couldn't hear or see anything. Everything became too bright and too loud. Raphael could hear cries and howls that belonged to other wolves. Raphael knew the sounds were not coming from his surrounding. He could feel the power surge and the hatred flow through her body. Yes, these were not his feelings. He felt what she was feeling. He tried to see her to ensure that it was his Elsa, but everything was too bright to understand anything. The rage, hatred, and anger Elsa felt was so overwhelming that they drained her life force. She felt destructive and on the verge of collapse. Whoever she was the most powerful thing he had ever experienced. He had to summon some of his strength. He could feel her so intensely that there was no way she could not reach his emotions. Raphael tried to focus on the sweet and sour memories he'd shared with Elsa. It was grim, but he tried to pull all his energy into remembering how he had felt when he saw her for the first time. It was the smell of her arousal for him that attracted him to Elsa. Even before they knew, they had always felt the pull. It was not something that happened anymore. The mate bond was not that much stronger as wolves became more envious and jealous and tried to put their ambition above everything else. But Elsa had to be unique for that pull to be happening. She must have kept her mind and heart preserved for him, because he certainly hadn't done that for her. He had been whoring around with anything that had a hole between its legs and looked pretty. How naive he was not to realize that Elsa was the one. Riker had said to him that Elsa was different. Her eyes were so unique. It was like the moon itself. His heart filled with sorrow and happiness when he reminisced about the moment their lips had met for the first time near the waterfall. It was the best thing he'd ever felt. That was the point he should have realized how essential Elsa was, but he got too involved and lost at that moment. But what hurt Raphael the most was the memory of how he refused to accept her as a mate. He belittled her by offering her to change packs and hide. When the moon goddess herself fated Elsa to be with him, to rule beside him, Raphael had the audacity to look down upon her. He deserved all the pain he was feeling over the past year. Raphael couldn't help but curse himself, as the memory of him having sex with Davinia right after he deflowered Elsa flooded his mind. It broke him apart to remember how he had the impudence to fuck Davinia in the same place where he had made love to Elsa a little while ago. He deserved all that suffering, and if Elsa was avoiding him, she had every right to do so. But the final straw was when he remembered how Elsa had fallen from the cliff. Her pleading, hopeful, and crying eyes would haunt him forever. There was no reprimand to that. It was enough for Raphael to feel things deeply and loosen out. He hoped Elsa would feel his pain and sorrow and understand his longing for her. He was denied to see her face for one last time, even if it meant it was only some kind of weird illusion connecting them. Elsa! He broke down into tears as his heart exploded with grief and guilt. Raphael didn't expect an answer. It could be an illusion projected by his fragile mind. But Raphael could feel the anguish and rage succumb in Elsa. He could feel confusion and sorrow emerging from her side too. The brightness became reasonable, and he could see Elsa's beautiful face. She looked different, but he knew it was her. Elsa had long silver locks that fell below her waistline. They matched well with her shimmering silvery eyes. She was wearing a white dress, but that could be his imagination. Everything here seemed white. But no matter what, she looked like the moon goddess. Raphael, she spoke as the surrounding near them became more colorful. Raphael smiled. Probably she was trying to reach out to him. You don't know how relieved I am to see you alive. I hated myself. I'm sorry, Elsa. Raphael needed to apologize. It was something he had imagined doing several times, but this time it felt substantial and more satisfying. Are you here for real? You don't look well. Elsa was unusually calm and peaceful. Her eyes held too many emotions, but he knew that she had not forgotten him. There was still a chance for them. I'm not sure what's happening, or if this is one of those many dreams I had of you, but it feels the most real. You look beautiful. Better than... Raphael stuttered towards the end. He didn't want to bring up terrible memories into the conversation. This was his chance at redemption, or so he believed. Thank you. But aren't you with Davinia? Elsa looked hurt when she thought about Davinia. He couldn't help but remember how she was standing naked beside Raphael, coated in his semen. I'm sorry. I betrayed your trust. But can you give me a chance to correct it? Please don't hate me. Raphael's eyes filled with tears and remorse for his past mistakes. I don't hate you, Raphael, but I can't go somewhere that I'm not needed. Elsa's voice came out broken. She was struggling to resist her urge to melt into his arms and bask in that citrus and musk smell. It was so soothing.
I need you. Raphael's voice was hoarse. He could fall before her feet if that's what she needed to return.
It is...
Elsa could feel a power surge through her. She could hear other voices around her, especially that of Noah. He was groaning in pain and shouting at others not to touch her body. Noah was fretting to Maya that her body was giving electric shocks if he approached her.
Raphael, I need to go. My people need me,
Elsa shrieked. It dawned on Elsa that they were in the middle of a war. The beast got possessed and ridiculed her. After that, everything went black and white until she heard Raphael's voice. But now she felt better. There was a lot she wanted to talk to him about, understand him. But now she had to return to the opals. Please stay. At least tell me where you are, Raphael begged. He couldn't tolerate getting separated from Elsa again. Only he knew how relieved he was to find out that she survived that fall. Somehow they had a connection, and that only meant they belonged to each other.
Opals,
was the last thing Elsa said before the illusion ended. Raphael sank onto his carpet as reality struck him. He was crying out of happiness and sorrow. But at least it relieved him that Elsa was alive and well. He knew he needed to go see her. He'd heard the battle sounds, so probably she was in the middle of some war. He had to be there with her, protecting her. Elsa, I'm coming, my love. Raphael had a tenacious determination in his eyes. Chapter 31. Ida. Raphael was awake the whole night. He tried to build the contact again, but no matter how hard he tried, there was nothing. Somehow they could only connect when they felt intense emotions. Something must have happened with Elsa that had kicked both of them into some alternate reality, because no matter what he tried, he couldn't establish that link. With the first hint of light, Raphael called a meeting with Jander, Liriana, and Davinia. Lucian was present there as well. Somehow he had developed a trust with this man. I have to leave. It's something important to me, otherwise I would not leave in such a situation. Raphael tried to convince Lucian one more time. Raphael was the leader of the Black Moon Pack. All that he had to do was command them, but Lucian was a powerful alpha. He needed some convincing after Raphael had worked so hard to unite all the packs behind the Black Moon Pack. The last time he left the city, they had to face a beast, so Lucian had a hard time understanding why Raphael was so determined to disappear again so quickly. Also, there was this thing with Davinia that was quite unsettling. He was in a great dilemma. Davinia had done a great service to the Moonlit City by killing off the beast. But that bracelet made no sense. It could have belonged to anyone, but something in his head said it belonged to Davinia. There were too many coincidences to ignore that fact. Right now, Davinia was the star. Hell, if she pleased, she could start a pack of her own and wolves would follow. She'd become that powerful after that night, so he really couldn't accuse her of anything just because he felt something was off. He tried talking to Raphael, but the man was hard to get a hold of to discuss things privately. Also, the trust he had in his Luna seemed like a fortress. Lucian sighed. Raphael had no intention of letting any of them know where he wanted to go, but Lucian couldn't let him go with so many things out of place.
Why do you want to go? At least tell us that. I think Lucian's worry is not baseless,
Davinia questioned, surprising Lucian. This girl was either too cunning or too good. I can't tell you this now. Trust me when I say I have an excellent reason. Raphael looked at her with pleading eyes. It kind of startled Davinia when her heart fluttered again, seeing Raphael's begging eyes. Since when could she understand these things? Ever since Raphael was back, she'd been feeling these strange things. It could be her possessiveness or ego, but she wanted him for her. When she would rule, she needed a powerful wolf beside her. This is so vague, Raphael. You are simply abandoning your cause and want others to take care of your dirty laundry, Lucian bellowed.
Lucian would not waste any more time on this useless discussion that was going nowhere. Above all, this was a matter of the Black Moon Pack. It was none of his business if their alpha abandoned them or not. They seemed like they were under the able hands of Divinia in his absence. He scoffed, demonstrating his irritation, and walked out of the office, without bothering to reply to their petty excuses. Lucian had only reached the small garden just outside the pack house when Raphael jumped right in front of him. Lucian rolled his eyes. This man had the nerve to not answer him, yet now he was showing off jumping floors? Ugh. I can pull that too, Lucian thought, huffing. These tricks won't work on me, even though that height was pretty impressive. Lucian scoffed in the air as he tried to walk past Raphael. Lucian, trust me, Raphael pressed. Why would I do that? Nothing is the way it looks in your pack, Raphael, I warn you. Now don't leave. Lucian forewarned him indirectly. All right. I cannot tell you here. Can we go somewhere else? Raphael sighed. Lucian was an alpha, and it was challenging to elude him. There was no way Raphael could leave the city to pursue the opals if the matter of the moonlit city's safety constantly bothered him. Raphael could not be selfish to put everything on Divinia and leave. Also, he was feeling remorseful. Divinia had been an excellent Luna, but Elsa was the rightful Luna, and he would go to any extent to make her agree. He didn't know how to break that news to Divinia. Raphael knew it would get complicated. He felt flustered as the guilt of using Divinia for his own needs and abandoning her like trash when he didn't need her anymore flooded his head. You want to check on the progress of the safe house? Lucian furrowed his brows. You sure? I mean, no other wolf has set foot in your land, Raphael asked, perplexed. We are creating a safe house in our borders, aren't we? Lucian scoffed. Lucian did that a lot lately. Something was bothering him. Raphael smirked. Lucian was better than his ancestors. He was an outstanding leader with an excellent vision of the future. Raphael was certain there was no leader better than Lucian for the Silverlets. Lucian extended his hand as a gesture for Raphael to walk towards the waiting car. He turned for a brief second to look at Divinia's scouring eyes. Lucian could feel the coldness in them, but there was nothing he could find for certain. He smiled at her to show a friendly gesture and walked towards the car. Divinia, who was staring at Raphael and Lucian all this while, felt restless when they drove off together. She didn't like that bonding. Raphael was too powerful alone, but having a Silverlit beside him would make him invincible. Lucian was dangerous news, and she wanted to get rid of him, but that dagger had changed the dynamics. If it could hurt the sires, probably it could hurt her too, so she would have to know more about the Silverlets and Lucian. You have a powerful Luna. Why don't you take her as a chosen mate? Lucian queried. He'd been dying to ask that for a while. Raphael smiled. A year before, if you would have asked me, it would not have amused me. I mean, the only girl I ever took seriously was Divinia. But that didn't stop me from being a fuckboy. The truth is, I always cared for her. But you don't love her. Raphael was struggling to find the right word when Lucian filled him in. Maybe in the past. I had doubted that I had certain feelings. I depended on Divinia a lot. I still do. But no, I don't love her, I am certain. That girl is amazing, and she deserves genuine love, but I can't give her that now. Raphael's heart weighed down with guilt. You seem to care for her. Lucian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Raphael could not notice the petty act. Yes, I do, Raphael smiled back. Here, take it. I guess it belongs to Divinia. I was so angry at the news of yours that I forgot to give this back to her. Lucian took out a small, dangling bracelet with a D charm. Ah, she will be so happy to have found it. Thank you. She was freaking out the whole time. It means a lot to her. Thank you, my friend. Raphael took it and kept it in his pocket. Lucian had a tiny bit of doubt that it could have belonged to anyone, but that too got cleared up. Now he was wondering if he should say where he found it, but before he could decide, Raphael asked him. Where did you find this? She said she lost it while fighting the beast, but we couldn't find it. According to Davinia, she even put a linking spell on it from some witch, but that silly girl still doesn't want to believe that someone could deceive her, and she fell for a trick. Raphael joked. Yeah, girls get too attached to materials and it's easy to deceive them. I found it on the ground, but you two were too engrossed sharing the details and discussing the welfare. And later it skipped my mind. Lucian fake apologized. Lucian couldn't help but wonder if Davinia had actually put a linking spell on it. The dagger he wielded was a special one. It could get past any magic and unravel it. So if there was any spell, it probably didn't work in its presence. When he took that dagger that night, he didn't believe in its powers. It had been in his family for generations, and only the true alpha could pick up the dagger without it inflicting any harm because of the silver. That was how alphas got chosen in Silverlit, but that was a piece of information Lucian did not feel like sharing with Raphael. Lucian had never believed in the other claims that the dagger could kill the purebloods, or like it could unravel any magic, but now everything made him wonder about those scrolls he chose not to read. It was time he took his history seriously and uncovered more. We're here, Lucian smiled at Raphael. When Raphael got out of the black-tinted car, it baffled him. He had heard about their riches, but they seriously were far more wealthy than anyone could have imagined. No wonder they were behind the finances of the city. The place reminded him of Elsa. It was too bright and silvery. There were several grand Gorgonian statues, all white, but what was the most extraordinary one was the statue of a pure white wolf placed in the middle of a large fountain. The wolf symbolized power, glory, and strength. The day Raphael had defeated Lucian was a vivid memory. No one before him could defeat a Silverlit in a duel. The place was greener and calmer with very few wolves. When Raphael entered the main door, a large hall welcomed him. They filled the room with modern amenities, but it had a very royal look. A grand imperial staircase first flight rose to a half landing. It had a big chandelier above it to make it look more majestic. From here, the flights divided into two symmetrical flights, both rising from an equal number of steps and turning to the next floor. The hall had massive arched windows from above the door, along with skylights in the hall to flood the place with light. Large chandeliers, candelabras, and paintings enhanced its beauty. They carpeted the floor in light pastel colors that enhanced its grandiosity. All in all, it spoke of the wealth of their pack, despite being settled here only a few hundred years ago. But as Raphael kept walking, he could see a large portrait of an exquisite woman dressed in white. She had an extremely pale complexion and silver eyes like those of Elsa's. She reminded him of Elsa from the previous night. Even though Lucian did not have silver eyes, he still resembled her other features like their sharp nose, broad forehead, and height. They do not call us Silverlit just for fun. She is a pureblood that my great-great-grandfather fell in love with and married, Ida. Ida had indeed given birth to twins and not just one. The girl who resembles her was stillborn, and the boy was a simple wolf who resembled my great-great-grandfather. Ida died in childbirth. According to him, his son showed no characteristics that Ida had, except that his son could now pick up the silver dagger that Ida treasured with her life. We are descendants of this son. Lucian confided some of his pack secrets with Raphael as he took out a small dagger from his coat pocket. Raphael gawked as he realized that Lucian had been carrying it this whole time. Why are you telling me this? Raphael was unsure why Lucian suddenly was telling him about his family secrets. Take it. Lucian encouraged Raphael to take the dagger. He was dying to find out if only a silverlit alpha could hold it, or any other powerful alpha could have it too. Raphael had defeated him in the duel. But as soon as Raphael touched the dagger, his hand hurt.
How?
He cringed in pain, dropping the dagger to the floor.
I am not even sure. I didn't believe in the story until now.
Lucian pondered as he picked up the dagger gently.
Why are you telling this all to me, Lucian?
Raphael groused.
So that you can trust me and tell me the real reason you are leaving the city. I'm willing to trust you, Raphael, but are you?
Lucian decided against telling the other secrets of the dagger.
She is my mate. She is alive, and...
Raphael contemplated if he should say that he found some striking resemblance between the photo and Elsa.
And?
Lucian squeaked. He was growing impatient.
Elsa resembles Ida a lot,
Raphael exclaimed.